Hey folks, welcome to Atlanta Drum Shop. This is an incredible brick and mortar store. It's been a while since we've had any good drum shop, specialty drum shop in Atlanta. We're thrilled to be here today with some of my friends, our fellow drummers, and that's what we're going to be highlighting here in this show is Drummers of Atlanta. If you are a drummer in Atlanta that has something to share, particularly has some kind of situation going on, an education situation or a unique show that you want to discuss, please feel free to contact us and let us know so we can bring you in and do an interview about that. We'd like to help highlight what's going on in the community here. So this was kind of an idea we came and I met Mike, the owner, and was talking about how it'd be cool if we did some kind of a series here with drummers from Atlanta. Seemed like a good idea. So I called the first few guys I knew off the top of my head who then I also had their contact info. So I brought in three of my buddies here, drummers from Atlanta that I've known for quite a long time. And we're going to go down the road here, introduce them. We're going to talk about what got us into drumming, why we're still drumming, and the chaos and mayhem that we've left in our path. And hopefully other people pick up those pieces and keep it going. So at my right here is Mr. Mike Froedge, Eric Sanders, and Shannon Kori. Now, I've known two of these guys for quite a while. I've been aware of you, Eric, for a while. But Shannon Kori is probably the first of us that I've met back in 96.
That's right.
It was a drum competition here in Atlanta. We both won. Shannon, give us a little background on how you got into drumming. What got you started and made you say, I want to do this?
So my father was a musician. He played a little bit of everything, so it was always in the house, always listening to good music. I was 7. First time we drove up here from Tallahassee, he took me to see the Police at the Fox.
Oh, nice.
And that was it for me. I was like, okay, that's what I want to do.
You know, you're
pretty much ever since.
And he just had a birthday. He turned 72.
That's right.
Yeah, last week or so.
And so you've been playing since the age of 7.
Yeah.
Should we say how many years that is?
No. 20 with a few years experience. No.
A while. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a few minutes. And then from there, I got into lessons, I started gigging early, 13, 14, started playing locally. We moved to Atlanta when I was 16, and this town used to have an incredible original music scene. So very fortunate to come up in that. Have literally been working ever since. Toured the world over, played with various artists. I won't get into. I've been very fortunate. Have lots of endorsements through these contacts, and been very blessed with it all. I have a steady church gig that I've done for 22 years now. Still doing it. I still do mostly recording work at this point in the juncture. I like being home.
Yeah.
I don't like being gone as much. Touring has changed these days, and it's not quite the same as it was. But
Eric, what got you into drumming? What made you go, oh my God, that's it, I'm going to do this?
Well, the early part was my dad was a musician too, kind of just like a home folk musician. He had a dear family friend who had gifted my older brother a guitar when he was very young. And then for one of my birthdays when I was a very little boy, he gifted me a pair of drumsticks. I still remember them. It was a Regal Tip 5A. It had the green logo on it. And even included a little bunny rabbit pin. And
that's a very specific
right?
memory.
Yeah. Well, I was. It was either my.
So that was your first influence, was the Energizer Bunny.
Well, yeah, perfect. Yeah. So he gifted me these sticks, and I don't remember how old I was. I could have been 7. It may have been 6. Could have even been 5. It was somewhere between 5, 6, and 7. I didn't play on a drum set till I was 10. So yeah, the very beginning was. I was gifted a pair of drumsticks as a birthday present by a family friend when I was a little boy.
Did you do band in school?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
Man, I remember being into music early on. Like some of my earliest memories was my parents, I think I was like 2 or 3. My parents gave me one of those little toy drum sets. It was basically like a tin can with paper heads, which I pretty much immediately annihilated.
Yes.
And
They
then,
don't last long.
yeah.
I've heard about those.
And I remember having a little toy guitar or a student model guitar or whatever. And my mom would put on Elvis records, and I would shake my butt and
Nice.
pretend I was Elvis. And my mom and my uncle had tons of records, like 45s and old 78 records. We had a Victrola, and so I was obsessed with records, and I played them all the time, listened to them all the time.
It's good to see them making a comeback.
Yeah, right. And I still have a huge box of 45s. I was into those. But I started taking, as a preteen, I was probably 10 or 12, started taking guitar lessons, piano lessons. Which taught me a basic knowledge of reading music and theory and all that. And then in 7th grade, I decided to join the school band. band class was at the same time as gym class. And I always hated sports. No interest in basketball, football, any running, circle around a track, any of that. And I'm like, well, you mean if I'm in band, I don't have to take PE class?
Sign me up.
Yeah. So I started out playing saxophone, which was cool.
Yeah.
But I kept looking over my shoulder at the drum section. I was like, those guys are loud. They're like screwing off. And they seem to be having a lot more fun than me.
Stress-free, they're getting their anger out.
So by eighth grade, I had auditioned for the drum section and got in. So
Nice.
from that point on, I was a drummer. And I started taking private lessons on drums rather than guitar and piano. And
were your parents upset about that?
no, not really. They were, considering my dad was a preacher and mom ran a Christian preschool, they were surprisingly supportive. Until I decided I wanted to be in a rock band, but that's another story. they thought Gene Simmons was the devil.
Wait, he isn't?
And they might not be too far off. But
I've been giving him credit. Was it you?
Right.
yeah, I made the mistake of in 1984 going to see Van Halen in 1984
Oh, wow.
and Prince Purple Rain tour, both of which I was not allowed to go do, but I did anyway.
Worth it.
Snuck out of the house. But in particular, I mean, Prince, I'm a massive Prince fan, but in particular, the Van Halen show, just life-changing. I was like, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I don't know. I live in the middle of nowhere
Was
in
it
a
good?
one
Was it
stoplight
loud
town in
enough?
Kentucky, but I'm doing that. And so it's basically Alex Van Halen's fault that I'm in the music business.
I love that.
Never met him.
Yes.
If I do, I'm not sure if I want to shake his hand or punch him in the mouth or both. I could have been a doctor or a lawyer, but I had to go to your damn show.
And for the record, Prince, absolute genius.
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
And a great drummer.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing some artists that are out there that we've known for years that we had no idea how good they were on drums. Like, have you ever heard Stevie Wonder play a drum kit?
Of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, and
On a lot of his records.
Yeah.
You heard him and you didn't know you were hearing him. Yeah.
exactly.
Chris Cornell is my idol, and he was the original drummer in Soundgarden.
Right.
Yeah, he taught himself how to play the drums by playing along to records by Rush and Yes.
I knew he was a big Rush fan, but I started in when I was five and a half. My brother got a snare drum. You know, the little snare drum with the little cymbal. Mm-hmm. But ours was cool, blue sparkle.
Nice.
Steel
That's
shell.
my favorite.
Nice wood one.
What's your favorite color,
And
buddy?
I think it came from two of my uncles played drums in the alumni marching band for Elkhart, Indiana, and Concord, Elkhart, Indiana, and the Elkhart little symphony they had or whatever it was. But I had one uncle that played mainly snare drum, but also did a few other things, and my other uncle played basically the bass drum and marching band. So through that, my dad got us a snare drum. And we're playing on that, and we beat the heck out of that thing for about a year, listening to the Kiss Alive album, going, man, this guy must have 8 arms. You know, listen to all that. And like, open up the album. No, he's got over 8 drums, you know. There's 8 arms. So we're like, okay, this isn't what they're playing. We didn't know. We were stupid. So, you know, but we did the same kind of thing, beating on cardboard on the edge of the bed. We had a pair of brushes. So I remember sitting in a chair playing on brushes on cardboard while we would rotate around who was going to be the drummer, who was going to be what. And the other two guys would stand up on the bed with badminton rackets, acting like they were guitars, and be jamming out. And I think my parents were like, this is nuts. We need to get him something. So for my brother's birthday the next year, it was April '78, he got a little 5-piece Sears and Roebuck Blue Sparkle drum kit with a cast iron freaking shield of a cymbal for a ride. It was unbelievable. Could have stopped a cruise missile with it. And then that was it. We just started playing a lot. And our early influences were Cheap Trick, Kiss, Boston definitely was huge for us. And then later on, we got into other influences and stuff like that. Heard Rush, and that totally changed everything. But that was it. I only ever had 7 formal lessons in my life, and the first 2 were to correct my hand technique using fingers and stuff. We'll get into that later, where I almost damaged my hands because I didn't have the formal lessons I should have had. And it's something I share with all my students all the time. We're talking about proper stick technique and stuff. But yeah, so started with that little 5-piece kit. But the thing that really got me into this is what I want to do was the old classic episode of The Muppets with Buddy Rich on it, where him and Animal did a drum battle.
The drum battle, yeah.
And I know everybody here has seen that. I watch it every chance if I find it. Got to see this again. And then it wasn't until later on, after playing a show one time, that I decided that that's what I want to make a career out of, somehow, some way. But anyway.
What were you thinking?
Does your brother still play?
My parents still ask that question, huh?
Does your brother still play?
He can. He can still play drums. He's gone the guitar route. He has a kit, because we both came to the conclusion that we were at our most fit and thinnest when we played drums a lot. I used to play 2 hours every day during the school year and 6 hours every day in the summer. So that's how I got to where I was with that. But I didn't go to band because when they came around to recruit us in 6th grade for middle school band, I was already playing drums in kindergarten. I was already on a drum kit. And I said, well, do you guys have drums? And they're like, yeah. And I said, cool, what do I get to play? Like a snare drum? I'm like, what else? March? That sucks. I don't want to do that. So I never did. I never joined school band and I did any of the formal stuff. And it wasn't until years later that I even learned how to read music. And I taught myself out of an issue of Modern Drummer where they had a transcription for Roll the Bones by Rush, which I already knew how to play by ear. I'd been playing by ear for years.
Well, I remember that, actually.
Yeah, and I looked and I
Nice.
said, oh, that's what that is. Okay. And then I figured it out. I taught myself what the notes were. And then as years went on later, I did kind of take more of a study into it. And now I teach it. I was nowhere near where you guys were at that point.
Well, just a different journey.
Total different journey. Yeah. It was quite interesting. So as we got into our drumming, do you guys remember your first show, your first band, your first live performance?
I mean, I started early, but probably biggest memories is like having your first, original. We had a funk rock band in the late 80s, early 90s.
Writing your own stuff.
Yeah, writing our own stuff, kind of along the lines of, Living Color meets Follow for Now back in the day.
Nice.
Playing the Rec Room and all the Cavern and all the cool venues we used to have.
I miss those clubs.
So as far as a memory, that's probably the earliest of like, hey, this is us and we're a band of brothers and we're going to kick y'all's ass. You know what I mean?
We're going to take
That whole
over the
mentality.
world.
Right.
We will leave our footprint on your ass.
That's right. Yeah. Absolutely.
What about you, Eric?
Yeah, as far as first bands and first shows, but when I moved from Queens, the very first day we moved from this apartment to this house, just across the proverbial tracks to Long Island. The next door neighbor, there was a kid in my grade. He was like a year older than me, but we were in the same grade, and he came over and said hi, and we became immediate friends. And within 2 years, by 5th grade, we started a band together. He was playing guitar, I was playing drums, we both singing, and we wrote original music. By 6th grade, he brought in a bass player. 7th grade, we had our big name change. 8th grade, we added a keyboard player, and we're playing concerts. 9th grade, we had the breakup. 12th grade, we had a little reunion. And that original trio from 6th grade, I hung out with them last week when I was back home in New York visiting my
that's cool.
family.
That's
We're still hanging out 40 years later. Did I just say 40 years? But yeah, we were playing concerts in middle school, and we had original music, and we also did covers. And learning those cover tunes, I was taking drum lessons by that time, but everything was all by ear. Back then, I was reading music and stuff, and I was learning how to chart. But all of that music, I just had a young brain. I was able to understand it and retain it. Now I have to chart out the easiest songs there are because I'm not going to remember it. But it was originals and covers, and we played concerts, and it was awesome. Yeah.
How old were you when you did your first show?
I don't remember. I mean, I was playing in school band concerts by like 4th grade or 5th grade,
Well, I mean,
and then
you're in
gig.
charge on you're the drummer in the band show.
I don't know, 11, 12.
I was 13 when I did mine.
But yeah, but even before that, my mom said I had the sticks in my hand, but I had not played a drum set yet. I didn't get to play a drum set until I was 10 in 5th grade. But I had those sticks for a few years, and I would never let them go. And she still tells the story of I looked up to her and said something like, I'm going to be a drummer. And she just, with her mom heart, she knew the way I said it, I wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
And so my parents have just still to this day, just the most incredibly supportive
That's awesome.
parents. And she pushed me to do that. I was playing a lot of sports and stuff, and she would sit there and say, if you don't get off of the baseball field and into the basement to practice, I'm taking away your drum lessons.
I wish more parents would do that.
Things like that.
So many
yeah.
kids drop
Now
out
it's
of
travel
lessons
ball
today.
24/7. Yeah.
And no, not to change subject on you here, but I've got students who practice sports 3 times a week, 2 hours at a time. They go to wherever it is they
Sure.
soccer, baseball. I got one student who said they practice 3 times a week, 2 hours at a time. So 6 hours a week. How much drum practice did you get in this week? About 10 minutes. Come on. You know?
Yeah.
Music to me is more teamwork when you're in a band, because if y'all aren't pulling your part, it sucks.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's blatantly obvious. And so it's more of an important thing to work together. But even more so, you don't have to be fit, trim, and stout to play music. Not everybody can run, jump, and throw a ball, but everybody can play an instrument of some kind. Everybody.
Sure.
Even singing, that's your instrument. You know, there's things you can do. And if you think about it, do you know any 70-year-old athletes out there? 70-year-old basketball players, football players? You think any hockey?
Not professionally, for sure.
No.
Yeah, but the Rolling Stones were just here in Atlanta, 3 weeks ago, and they're in their 80s.
Right.
You know, so
Keith
you
Richards
can-
is 125.
No, he's older than that. But you know, that's the point. Is like music is something that'll stay with you forever, and you can always do it.
Yep.
You know, even if you may have to change instruments at some point. You may have a situation where, I got arthritis and I can't do this, but I can sing, or I can kick something, or or write something down, or whatever. But you can always do music, and I wish people put a little more emphasis on spending time doing that and actually learning to play an instrument.
Well, I think we grew up in an era where we had less technology. So you learned an instrument, you started jamming with your friends.
We were in the era
Then
that
it
was
be-
developing the technology.
Right. It became, let's hang out, let's play, let's jam. You bonded,
My technology was my record player, which I would turn all the way up so I could hear it. Play along.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Probably sounded horrible, but I could hear it, so I could play with it. you know?
You get it just to the point where the speakers start crackling, and then okay, so maybe I should back it off a little bit.
Right. It was high school. I was, I think, a junior in high school. I had joined my first rock band, cover band. All the other members, we were all 16, 17, and then there was the old guy in the band who was 22.
Right on.
The lead guitarist, and he was into science fiction novels, so he named the band Fahrenheit 451. Cool. Which music we covered had nothing whatsoever to do with that. He just thought it sounded cool.
I love that.
So other than middle school and high school band performances and things like
Right.
that, my first rock band gig
Yeah,
was
where
probably,
you're the drummer, you're in charge.
yeah, I was 16, 17, and I shoved my white double piece Pearl export kit into the back of my 79 Camaro and drove to rehearsal twice a week for that cover band.
That's
and
how
then
you do it.
we played, my first gig was a county fair
Love that.
in that little one stoplight armpit town where I grew
Yeah, you
up.
probably still had a pretty good crowd, though, right?
And yeah, we had some people, all our high school friends, because there were guys in the band from 3 different high schools.
Oh,
So we
wow.
all had our buddies and our girlfriends and our mom and dad and our uncle and cousin and So yeah, it was, and plus it was a county fair.
Yeah.
So yeah, they set up a literal semi truck flatbed trailer
Did they have little scaffolding
and
lights and stuff?
PA on a stick, and
Yeah.
eight lights and our
You got a
guitar.
stick, you can get that.
But
guitar
man,
is- the
did you
guitar
feel
is
like Van
spray
Halen
painted.
though, man?
Oh yeah, we played Van Halen, Judas Priest, AC/DC, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
The guitarist had spray painted Fahrenheit 451 on a white bed sheet and strung it up
Nice.
in between their 8 lights.
Sign, I
And
love it.
that was my first gig, was the county fair.
Do you find playing
awesome.
the outdoor shows when you go to throw your stick in the air that there's wind and it just kind of drifts out?
Right?
I hate that. My first gig, I was 13. It was 1984. Oh gosh, I just gave the math away right there. It was a retirement party for somebody that my dad worked with. It was a little place. I remember it was called Parkway Inn Tavern in Elkhart, Indiana, somewhere up there. And it was 80 people there, and I was nervous as hell. Okay, I'd never played in front of people. And it was on a little, it was a borrowed drum kit. It was like a champagne sparkle. I called it ham sparkle. It was that pink ham color. I don't know. It's some reason every time I saw that kit, I thought of ham. And it was the stupid things. It was a little 5-piece kit. Might have been 4, but it was a neat little drum kit, little Rogers. And we just did 3 old songs. But Rock Around the Clock was the first song I ever performed live.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So it was really cool to get up there and do it. We're all dressed, with Vaseline hair to look slick. I got a empty carton of cigarettes rolled up in my sleeve to look like a greaser, and I was like, oh, parents let me do that. So, but we got up there and played, and how I got through it without being nervous, I looked over the tops of the heads, and this is what I tell a lot of my students too if they're nervous about performing. Look at the wall, the back of the room, look right over the top of the last row. So it looks like you're looking at them. They won't know, but you're actually looking at the wall. And I did that, and then I just kind of gradually started seeing people I knew, and they're smiling, and that made me feel better, and I got comfortable with it. And that was really the one that really bit me. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is totally, that's why I was telling you earlier.
Got the bug.
The thing that, oh, yeah, I definitely want to be a drummer was the Muppets and Buddy Rich. But the thing that was like, this is what I want to do. Now, let's talk first drum set. You want to talk
That's
about
a good one.
drum set?
Sure.
Yeah. It was.
All right.
I thought about that when you mentioned yours, because my first one.
Yeah, we got to talk about mine. Mine's done. It was a blue Sears and Roebuck, so that's all you need to know.
Well, when you said blue, I was like, my first one
Sparkle blue.
was a blue sparkle Rogers that some idiot had hand painted black over the top of the blue sparkle.
That's a sin. He's burning hell for that.
Yeah, and like took, I mean, this was like 1980, 81, something like that. And so, like everybody did, they took the bottom hoops and the bottom hardware and all that stuff. Concert toms when they weren't supposed to be.
Yeah.
And hand painted the black outside of it black and the inside of it white. And
Interesting.
I wish I had known what I know now back then, because I would have hung on to that kit and restored it and kept it. And a couple of years later, I traded it for the white export double bass
weird to come
kit
across that one
because
day?
I wanted a new kit, a shiny new kit,
Bigger and shiny. Yeah.
like idiot.
What was your first one?
Yeah, blue sparkle Rogers. Didn't have any cymbals at first. I had a 5-piece kit and a cowbell.
Did you have crappy cymbals for your first ones? Ones that
Oh,
chunked
yeah.
and broke, and you had to cut it out with metal.
Finally
10
got a pair of
snippers and
hi-hats.
try and file it so you didn't cut the shit out of your hands.
Finally got a pair of hi-hats. My dad bought me like a pawn shop Zildjian Amir pair of hi-hats,
Nice.
And then I got a crash cymbal, and I was excited about that. And I had to build the cymbal collection. Started out with a drum set and a cowbell. I played Mississippi Queen a lot. And
Oh, so you had the cowbell already
Nice.
too.
yeah.
What was your first kit?
Well, I'm jealous of both of you because all I ever wanted as a little boy was a Royal Blue Sparkle drum set, and I never, ever, ever had one. And then just the other year, my good buddy Shannon over here, who helps me with a lot of my gear at my home studio, we came up with a plan, and last year I got my childhood dream, and I took an old drum kit that I played over 1,500 gigs on, and I got it all refurbished, and I have my Royal Blue Sparkle drum set now,
Nice.
and I've played it a couple of times last year and this year, and some shows coming up. But as far as first drums, my 10th birthday, I woke up, and my parents had bought me a snare drum. It was just a snare drum on an old Ludwig Atlas stand, and it was a Korg, and it has that, I forget what it's called, but the amplifier, I have the word somewhere in here. That type of material was on the outside. I talked with John Sheldon about it. He was able to discern like what company it was and where it was and everything. But so I got that snare drum, and I would play it in my room, and I would just say, "Well, Mom, what if I had a bass drum to go along with it? And then what if I had a hi-hat? And then what if we have other toms? And then what if we get a crash cymbal?" And so it started,
spinning drum
right. So it started to turn into, okay, we're going to start with drum lessons. And we rented, like what you had, it was like the paper heads. We rented a drum set from the local music store for maybe 2 months. And it was like wrapped in like wallpaper. And like you hit a tom and the whole thing just, destroys.
Fell apart,
Yep,
yeah.
it just falls. But they saw me playing it enough that my first drum set was a CB700 International. And I say it like that because it wasn't spelled international. It's spelled like AILE at the end. So I guess it's International.
French version.
So, and it was maroon.
The fancy CB700.
That's
Right?
The bougie version.
But I played that all the way until I was a second semester senior, and that kid is still in my parents' attic up in New York now.
That's cool.
And so it was like, it was $250 for the whole kit. It was a 5-piece kit. And it came with this, just a generic bass pedal, and the drive on it always broke. So my dad would take a piece of leather and he would like put
Like
that
the
in, and then yes, but then it would stretch, so then it would hit the wing nut on the bottom, and he would take it off and he'd put a new one on.
Do it again.
And
Homemade strap drive.
Yep. And it did come with budget cymbals, which a lot of students nowadays, I love telling them about this because they're like, no way. PA Meinl, who were this humongous not only cymbals, but a full like percussion company now. They were a budget company in the early 80s. It was like terrible cymbals. And the ones that I had were called Meteor. And so the Meteor cymbals that I had, 14-inch hats, 16-inch crash, 20-inch ride, they're all cracked. They're all still in the attic, though. I still have them.
They all probably sound the same.
Yeah. So, those Avanti cymbals were around then that time. And so at that, for some reason, they gave me the Meinl Meteor. They also had Avanti at this store. And so, it was a CB700 Maroon International 5-piece kit with the Meinl cymbals, and I loved it. And I played it until I was a second semester senior in high school.
Your first drum kit.
So my dad had a kit. Like I said, he was a musician as well. So he had an old Japanese Lido Supreme.
Lidos, yeah.
Sounded great.
Nice.
And then my first kit, I got, it's about 7 when I finally got my
L-E-E-D-O, right?
L-I-D-O.
L-I-D-O.
Yeah. There was a lot of, they were all similar kits back in the day. All those made in
Japanese
Japan.
copies of American drums.
Exactly. Slingerland copies.
Yeah.
And then my first kit was a 60s Slingerland. Wasn't really blue sparkle, but it was more of a purple. Had like a purple
you got
to
the
it.
blue one.
Yeah.
You got the purple. If you're not going to have blue, purple's the way to go.
It was cool. Love that kit. Same kind of thing, though. I wish I had still had it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you only knew now what you knew then.
That's my first. Before I got that kit, my first snare was a blue sparkle too.
Yeah.
Oh,
When I
that's
first started taking drum lessons, my parents, same thing. My parents bought me a snare drum, and I wish I still had it because I remember it was a leady. It was like a 6x14 leady,
Oh, man.
blue sparkle.
That's a collection.
With the case and the Ludwig stand and all that. And it was before I even knew anything about drums. So I pounded on that thing until I broke the head. And then I kept pounding on it, and I remember I destroyed the bearing edge.
Oh, man.
Yeah, you
Just
have to
kept
stop
playing.
Once the head's gone.
Yeah,
They
so
didn't
like
tell you that.
it was still around for a while, but after I got my drum set and I had a snare that actually worked and whatever, my parents probably threw it away. I don't know. Leady blue sparkle snare drum that I destroyed because I was an idiot who didn't know any better.
Crazy bone.
Yeah.
Have we hit the crazy bone? Craziest thing that happened to us on stage behind a drum kit. We'll narrow it down to that. Has there been a situation?
I can't really say I have.
I can only think of two.
Like
One was good
anything
and one
crazy.
was bad.
There was one where I did that punk rock thing that most gear snobs will probably hate me for, but my old band Double Drive.
Did you Green Day a drum kit?
Yeah. we were on tour. It was when we were touring for our MCA album. This was probably like 99 or 2000 or something. And it was it was the last day of that tour. And we were opening for this band who had just been completely not cool.
Super nice.
I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
They were wonderful.
So it was the last night of that tour, and it was just one of those nights, man. Like our singer's mic was cutting out, our guitar player's pedal board is
One of those days.
cutting out. Yeah. I broke a snare head, so I had to swap a snare in the middle of the set.
Sounds like
And
you were
so
sabotaged
We make
before the show
it.
started.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Like we make it to the end of the set, and of course our last song is the big single that was on the radio and all that, right? And not even into the first chorus, I don't think. And I put my foot through the kick drum head. That was the last straw. I just lost it.
Well, can't
So
do
I
anything
just-
at that point, right?
Tossed my sticks over my shoulders, grabbed the hoop of my kick drum, and just flipped it. But my kit, I had built this custom rack that it looked like handlebars. It was
Right
like
on.
the curved Gibraltar pipes came out from under the kick drum.
Yeah.
And so that held a couple of cymbals and the whatever over here, and held in the rack tom, and held the four toms and a couple of cymbals over here. But it was all like attached. So I guess just adrenaline, my caveman strength came into play.
You hulked it out.
So when I flipped that kick drum, everything flipped. This side of the rack and the drum went that way, this side went that way, this side went that way, and
Knock the amps over and everything, too?
it was like show was over. We were done. So
Equivalent
it was
of a
just
mic drop.
annihilated. Microphones went everywhere, cables went everywhere. It was a mess. And surprisingly, the only damage done was when the kick drum did 3 or 4 cartwheels and landed. It landed on the pedal, so it broke the hoop, the batter side.
Wow.
Hoop. So yeah.
That's replaceable.
It's amazing. That's all that happened.
See, we were talking about leaving chaos and mayhem in your path. Your path of destruction.
That was my one, tantrum on stage where I just was like, F this. Everything sucks.
My weirdest one, my weirdest
cool
good
story.
one was we were on a platform that was pretty slick. And this is where I learned you got to have something to keep your drums from sliding around. Your bass drums are moving, everything's moving.
For sure.
Well, the rototom started sliding away, and I'm playing one hand. This was during the song that we were doing, playing one hand and trying to slide these rototoms back over. And you know how they got those ungodly, overly long sticks on the hi-hats there, the cymbals go over. And this is where I learned to hacksaw that extra crap off of there.
Yeah.
Because it caught the rototom. The rototom fell onto the hi-hats while I'm playing. And I'm like, now I'm trying to set
the other way.
back up and readjust my hi-hats while playing and not missing a note. And somebody actually saw that and I said, man, how did you do that? I said, I don't know, but I'm glad it worked. Shannon's never had an embarrassing moment. His shows have gone great.
I had a somewhat situation of yours, but it wasn't a tantrum. It was kind of funny. So I was playing in mostly all original hard rock band on Long Island at the time. This is like 92, 93, we were together. There was a big club that we wanted to get into. We were trying for a really long time. And, even just as an opening band for like one of the bigger bands coming through. And it was very difficult to get in. They finally gave us a night, which was like the worst night of the whole year. So there was like, my parents were there and like the singer's sister, and that was about it. A couple other folks, but it was like dead. But we treated it like we were playing Nassau Coliseum and this is our audition, to take over the world, and be huge. So we really went for it.
Rehearsal.
Yeah, and I'm up there on the drum riser, which is this big, beautiful stage. And the singer, who's my childhood best friend, and we're still very tight, he jumped up onto the riser, which wasn't a lot of room, and he's like singing at me and everything. And then he turns around and he's about to do a big jump. But what we didn't realize is when he turned around, the back of his T-shirt got caught on one of the pieces of hardware on my rack. And he went and did like a David Lee Roth, split jump in the air, went down and took my whole drum set with him. And I'm sitting there playing, and I'm seeing it in slow motion. And I'm like, no! And the whole thing is falling down and falling down. And I'm like 19 years old, and this drum set meant everything to me. So everybody that knew me would figure I would start freaking out immediately and jumping down to it and tending to the fallen gear. And I don't know why I did it. I just kept playing. And I looked down and I had this line of hi-hat, snare drum, bass drum, floor tom, China. And I'm like I can do this. I'm gonna finish the song. I'm just gonna finish the song. And I finished the tune and they brought it back up, and the only thing that ended up being injured was the 16-inch crash cymbal. Since it was the lightest one, when it fell on it, it took the brunt, and the boom arm bent. The boom arm bent, and that was it. Nothing else was wrong with it, and they just put it back up. Everything was exactly where it was, and then we finished out the night.
Actually, now that you said that, so this is early 2000s. I'm playing with Colonel Bruce and the Fiji Mariners. We're playing at the Brandy House. We were doing this 3-month residency thing. And so Bruce stumbles one night, walking around being goofy, and he falls right into because I'm set up sideways. Matrazo's on, the keyboard player's on the other end, we're bookends, if you will. And Bruce just missteps and he falls right into the kit. And the next thing I know, you've got Colonel Bruce sitting in your lap trying to hold up your drum set and play a song. So, okay, that's probably my craziest moment.
And by the way, when I was talking about craziest moments off stage, it had to do with rooming with Colonel Bruce. That was my crazy story there.
100%.
Yes, I was. He's the reason I moved to Atlanta. I auditioned for him up north in Pennsylvania. I auditioned for him and he said, "Boy, pack up your drums, move to Atlanta next Tuesday." And I did, and I've never left.
We left out one big thing. Mike, you toured with somebody pretty well known. you toured with somebody who was no small name in the music business.
Yeah, kind of my. I don't really tour anymore since 2012 when I left that gig, but kind of my big hurrah after 24 years of touring was Black Label Society. Zakk Wylde, Ozzy Osbourne's guitar player. In the early 90s, I was in a touring cover band, doing the rock cover band circuit back when there was such a thing and you can make a living at that. And
now it's tribute bands.
Yeah, and there was a guy named Nick. Nick had a cover band called High Voltage, and we used to play all the same places, and actually had the same booking agent for a while, whatever. We knew each other from back then. We stayed in touch over the years, over the decades. So he became when Zach started Black Label Society, he became Zach's rhythm guitar player. Fast forward to 2009 or 2010, when I had my recording studio here in town, Nick contacted me. He wanted to do a side project with me, and when we started it, it was just him, me, and Mike Stone, who at the time was playing with Queensryche. So we did this side project called Speed X, just a one-off with actually my old bass player Josh from Double Drive, and a local guy named Jason Fowler ended up being the vocalist for it, and played a handful of gigs, put the record out, whatever. That was kind of the beginning and the end of that. It was just for fun, basically, just because I had a studio and we could do it, so we did it. Less than a year later, my buddy Will Hunt had just played on the, he had just drummed on the, what was then the current Black Label Society record, and had done some touring with them. But he had already been for quite some time the drummer for Evanescence, along with my old guitar player from Double Drive. And they're like members / hired guns or whatever at the time. I don't remember what the arrangement was, but basically they were on call.
Gotcha.
Like when she said jump, they had to jump.
Yeah.
So she said jump, and he had to go do an Evanescence record and tour, and on very short notice, Black Label needed a drummer. So Nick called me, and I ended up doing Black Label for a while. Went, once again, all over the world.
That's awesome.
All over the U.S. and South America and Japan and Europe and Eastern Europe, and I don't even remember where all we went, everywhere. A lot of the big European and U.S. rock festivals. And
just goes to show you, folks, you get out there and get your name about, and just get involved in the music scene. Yeah, you'll never know what happens.
It's almost entirely word of mouth and just networking and connections, and so, yeah.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out Atlanta Drum Shop's Drummers Roundtable Podcast, Episode 1. Be sure to look in the description below for the link to the tour of the shop that we take. This will give you a chance to see all the stuff that they offer, vintage drum kits, restoration, you name it, it's there. Get yourself out to Atlanta Drum Shop quick and check out what they've got. Thanks for watching.